We'll move on to our consent calendar, and Executive Vice Chancellor Bruckman reminds me that we can take this as a whole if we like. So the consent calendar is actually items 1.1 through item 1.4, correct? So are there any members would like to pull or ask questions or comment on any of the consent items? Member Ramos.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to know the following about our contracts and grants. Nothing in particular about the slate that we have before us, but a general question. In my short time...
If I could just...
Yes.
So do you want to pull the contracts and grants?
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question, if
Okay.
I may, or make a comment that
Fair
maybe
enough.
will
Okay.
take the form of a question.
All right.
In my short time as a member of this board, I have not really seen any particular mechanism that we have available to us as a board to discern the impacts of the grants that we have made or the contracts that we've extended. And I have no doubt that that data must be available to us through reports from the field. I don't want to burden the staff because I know that they are at capacity, if not beyond it, in terms of their reporting requirements. But I think as a board, from a policy making standpoint over time, it behooves us to understand how these grants and contracts are having an impact on the ground and to what extent it might inform adjustments that we make in our priorities, both on the Chancellor's staff and as a board.
Do you want to respond?
Yeah, I don't have a specific response. It's obviously a general comment. But I believe that the recipients of the grants, the vice chancellors who manage those grants can provide some more information, and we'll talk about that if the chancellor agrees, and we'll figure out a way to provide you with more information.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, Vice Chancellor.
All these funding streams, especially on the workforce and economic development side, have annual accountability. So maybe one thing we can start with is to forward to the board, and I thought that process had already been taken.
Yes.
The annual reports, accountability reports. So why don't we start there, and we can then discuss any further.
Yeah. I know, I recall that before former Vice Chancellor Mian did come before the board and give us an explanation of these particular grants, what they were doing. But I agree with you, Member Ramos. I think that, as much feedback as we can get would be helpful. Another comment.
Yeah, I just want to briefly add that my thinking on this, and I don't think I'm surprising anyone, is that in this day and age when we are competing for very thin public resources to support our work and we are falling behind, as the Chancellor has reported, I think it's imperative, to the Chancellor's point about reminding our elected officials of the import of our work, that we have specific examples of the value added of this investment. And we can point to those kinds of investments and show not just the accountabilities to the contracts and grant agreements, which I think are important, but the actual benefit to people on the ground in terms of their employability, in terms of their income generation, in terms of their taxation base that they would add value to in terms of the state's revenues. These are the kinds of things that I think our elected officials would take great interest in knowing if we could be more specific of making that case. That's just the thought.
Chancellor Scott.
I applaud the comments you made, and we'll try to furnish you more information. I will assure the board that always at our next Chancellor's Cabinet, after a board meeting, we ask the question, what are the questions that the Board of Governors has asked, and how can we respond more effectively? And so I think that Member Ramos has raised a good question, that with more information, we can be able to sell the effectiveness and the accountability that we have with these grants. So feel free, as you always do. I'm not, but all I'm saying is that I do want you to know that we take seriously your comments, because always at the next Chancellor's Cabinet, we make a list of the things that you've asked for, and in most cases, I think we've responded, and we're glad to get those kind of suggestions.
I'd like to move the consent agenda.
Okay. Second by Member Baca, moved by Member McDougall. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.